Hello and welcome to the Catch a Lift Coaches Corner. I am CAL coach and program director Melissa, and this week I'm honored to welcome Luke Lorenz to the show. Luke is a junior at Middlebury College where he runs cross country and track. Luke is a tremendous CAL supporter who is originally from Westport, Connecticut. Welcome to this week's episode of Coaches Corner. Luke, welcome. Thanks for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're so excited to talk with you. Let's jump right in, Luke. Talk to us a little bit about your life growing up and ultimately how you landed at college in Middlebury.
So growing up, I'm one of three brothers. I'm part of like a very active family. Obviously, you guys know my mom, and that's kind of how I got involved with Catch a Lift. But yeah, we were a very, very athletic family growing up. And so I was always playing a sport. My brothers were always playing a sport. And if we weren't, then we were playing together. So that's kind of what drove me to like this obsession with fitness and ultimately my involvement in Catch a Lift. And then for Middlebury, I run cross country and track, and I love it. And I knew I wanted to run somewhere in college, but I didn't want like the one-dimensional aspect of only competing, only racing with not the central focus on school. And so I wanted to go to a college where I could be like a competitive runner and have an impact on the team, but also go to a school with very strong academics.
Right.
So totally just going for a balance. But I knew I wanted to run in college, but didn't necessarily want to go D1. So that's kind of how I ended up here. And the thing that sold me on this school was like the team atmosphere. I had like visited a few schools. I had talked with the coaches. I had talked with a few kids on the team. And upon arriving at Middlebury, I just kind of knew this atmosphere was.
What was different about the atmosphere at Middlebury as opposed to some of the other schools you looked at?
They weren't trying to kind of sell me on the school. Like, this is this is this. Like, this is what we do. It was like a very nonchalant, low key atmosphere where they were like, come with us and we'll just take you through a day. And they didn't try and sell me at all. And I really liked that. And just, I could see how comfortable everyone was and how unique personalities kind of melded together. Like, no one on the team was very similar, but it somehow kind of all came together from different experiences and backgrounds into something really special.
That's really cool. Luke, what are you studying at Middlebury?
I'm currently studying computer science, and I'm also doing the pre-med track. So it's been quite, quite a workload, especially when you pair with competing at a higher level.
And I mean, we're going to get into that more here in just a minute, talk about your competitive running and everything. But since you brought that up right now, Luke, how do you balance that? How do you balance, the time you have to put in to train to be a competitive runner, but also, like you said, a big part of going there was the academics. How do you balance it?
I honestly find when I have less time, I'm more efficient. So I think being part of an active lifestyle also plays a part. Having teammates that hold you accountable. Our team actually had, I believe my freshman year, we had the highest team GPA in the entire country. So that was also a reason that kind of sold me on the school. Like, we obviously have a lot of fun and practice and don't take ourselves too seriously, but at the same time, you're surrounding yourself with very smart and intelligent and committed people. Really makes it much easier to kind of balance the workload because you always have someone there to keep you accountable. And I found that has kind of made my college experience. Like, otherwise, I don't think I could have handled the athletics and the academics at the level.
That's tremendous. Luke, talk to us about the sports you are participating in.
Yeah, so I run cross country in the fall, which is one race. Everyone runs the same distance, which is 8 kilometers or 5 miles. And then in the winter and spring seasons, I run indoor and outdoor track, which varies distance to distance. In indoor, I can run the mile, the 2 mile, or the 5K, which is just over 3 miles. And those meets usually take all day with varying events and different people running different things. And so it's a little bit different. Our track team is around 100 people, whereas our cross country team is around 20 to 30.
Yeah.
So you have totally different atmospheres, but I love them both. Like they're both very unique, and I always miss one when the season passes, and then I get
I'm
into the
sure.
other, and I totally enjoy it. So,
talk to us a little bit, Luke, about the difference between indoor track and outdoor track.
So it's two different seasons, but technically one continuous season.
Okay.
In that you go right from indoor into outdoor. Whereas cross country, you have a bit of a lull in late November/December where you're not competing. Indoor, you compete January, February, March, April, May. And so it is a very different approach than cross country. I think I've talked with my coach a few times, and I think we're honestly going to table the majority of indoor in preparation for outdoor, just in terms of a longer build up for more longevity.
Okay.
But in indoor track, obviously it's inside. The loop or the track length is 200 meters instead of 400. So if you're running a mile indoors, it's 8 laps, but outdoors it's only 4, which is fun. Like obviously with a smaller track, there's a much louder atmosphere. You see the runners more times. Indoors, the acoustics bouncing off and everything.
Right.
And I also just think after like the 2-year hiatus due to COVID, I think there's going to be a lot of energy this season because it's been 2 years since we really
right.
had
So I was going to say, right. So when was the last time you guys did indoor?
I believe it was February 2020 because we did not have a season.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So I've actually yet to experience an outdoor track season here at Middlebury.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. But I'm really, really looking forward to March, April, and May.
Okay. So talk to us a little bit right now, like what type of preparation are you in? What does your training right now look like?
So right now it's very dialed back. Like as I had mentioned before, we kind of had a long break after cross country where it's more just base running, like base mileage, no intensity, but more volume. And so it's been that. I've also been swimming and biking a lot because I've been having some hip pains recently. But yeah, a few people on the team are competing in January, but for the most part, it's a very long and slow build-up to kind of accumulate into the outdoor season because that's what I think we're focused on as a team.
Right. How does strength training, what type of component does that play into your preparation for your seasons?
So in cross country, there's much more of an emphasis on staying healthy, preventing injury. And so we don't necessarily strength train for power or explosiveness, but more for muscular endurance and stability to prevent us from like developing these hiccups over the long miles. Whereas in indoor track, the races are much shorter. They require a lot more strength and power and top end speed. And we found that lifting really, really helps there. So like right around now is when we start to really tick up the lifting and change the types of lifts that we're doing. So
your preparation, like, you know, because we're talking about running, right? But so much more goes into running than just like go out and run.
Yeah, totally.
Luke, walk us through, let's start with cross country because I'm curious. So like, you know, say we were in cross country season right now. What would kind of a typical week look like for you training? When would the race be? Kind of how is that week approached?
So there are a few different phases of a cross country season. People usually say the most important months of the season. It's a long season, and they say it really starts back over the summer before you start racing at all, where you really get your base and foundation in. And so that like a typical week in August might look completely different from a week in November. So like, for example, in August, I would run like probably 90 miles in a week, which would constitute of, I guess, I guess I can walk you through a typical week in August.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
Monday I would do Monday would be my easier day. I would run 7 to 8 miles, just slow, however I felt. Tuesday is usually a workout, so it would be a longer, low intensity, but still like up tempo run. And I would do that in the morning. I would probably warm up 2 or 3 miles, do 7 miles of up tempo running, and then cool down 2 or 3 miles for around 12 miles. And then Tuesday afternoon, I would lift, and then I would go back out for 4 more miles for, I think, 16 or 17 miles on Tuesday. Wednesday, I would do around 13 miles, just one run, and usually have like a long stretch or yoga session after, because my muscles would definitely be feeling it after the intense Tuesday. Thursday was another easy day. I would do like 10 or so miles. And Friday was typically another workout. This was on the track this time, and it would be 16 to 20 repetitions of 200 meters. So on the outdoor track, just one half of the outdoor track. On the indoor track, it would be one lap.
Okay. Yep.
And I would also run again on Friday for a total of 17 or so miles. And then Saturday would be another easy day. It'd be around 10 or so miles. And Sunday is our long run day. And so that could be as much as 20 miles. And that was usually the toughest run of the week, because you're capping off the week on tired legs.
Right.
And in the summer as well, with the humidity and heat, it was no joke. So I sometimes was fortunate enough to get my brother to hop on a bike next to me while I ran, and he would bring like some lemonade or some water, which would save me halfway through. And so that would come out to about 90 miles. But as the season progresses, we typically raced on Saturdays. And so our harder workouts would stay on Tuesdays, but we would kind of downscale the intensity and volume leading up to races. Like in November, I probably only ran 40 to 50 miles a week, compared to 90 in August, even though same season. But we were just nearing the end of the season. I was tired. And we were really trying to dial in for those final races.
So. That's incredible. Thank you for taking us through that, Luke. Kind of parallel question to that. So again, and we can operate in the cross country season when we talk about this. So, if Saturday's race day, what does your nutrition look like throughout the course of that week? How are you fueling these workouts, long runs opposed to short, even, leading up to the day of the race?
Yeah. So, especially when I was in the bulk of mileage, I was just trying to eat as much as I possibly could. Like you're running and active for so long that whatever you can get in I find to be just helpful. But especially as we got into the season and nearer to racing, I found it was really important to cut back on like a lot of fattier foods, like quote unquote unhealthy.
Right.
And obviously scale up the carbohydrates and vegetables. And I found my diet kind of like over the summer when you're not racing, it's okay to kind of slack off or relax a little bit, because you are running a lot. And at the end of the day, you do need the calories.
For sure.
But when you decrease the mileage a little bit and you're not burning as many in a day, then I found it was very beneficial to kind of take a closer look at my diet and kind of scale it around how I was racing. And I've been someone who doesn't try to obsess over every little thing I eat. I find when I do that, it kind of I get in my head mentally.
Right.
And then I think it does more harm than good. But
for sure,
as long as I keep like a holistic, healthy diet, that's traditionally worked for me.
Do you ever, like when you're doing the long runs, Luke, is there ever a time like where you need to do gels during or anything, or, replenish during the runs at all?
I'm sure it would help. I've never done any gels, but I have found that some of my best runs, especially over the summer, have come from my brother being on a bike and giving me water or giving me some sort of like lemonade or sugary drink. especially in the hot summer where you're losing a lot of water weight and sweat. So I do think that is really important, and it's something that I kind of neglect because I don't want to have to like carry something. It can get annoying.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's another thing logistically you have to wrangle. Yeah.
Fortunately, I think I've been fine without it, but it does totally help if it's something you're willing to put up with.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible. What about like kind of, and I know we're kind of going back and forth here, but you know, if we talk about kind of transitioning back to the track season and even looking at, you know, an outdoor track meet, would you be running multiple races at the same meet?
So it tends to depend on the meet. I would say at meets, at like conference meets, championship meets, meets which are scored, I typically have run multiple races. Given that I haven't had a collegiate cross country season yet, and that was in high school, the competition I think was a little less intense, and so I could get away with running one or two or three events and placing in them and being able to help the team that way. But I do anticipate that there will be a few meets where I run more than one race, and if that's the case, it's really important in between, like what you do in between races, obviously, because you're coming back, you're doubling, you're not going to be running on fresh legs. And so whatever you can do to kind of give you an advantage over people who are running on fresh legs really helps. And so typically on days I would run twice, I would like shortly jog after to shake out the lactic acid, like 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Hydrate, stay off my feet, even throw the legs up to kind of drain even more lactic acid out, and then jog a little more before the second race to kind of get the legs prepped again. And it's really important that you do that, because otherwise if you race and then sit around waiting for your second race and come back, you're going to be flat-footed and heavy.
Yeah.
So,
thank you for taking us through that, Luke.
Yeah, and fortunately, the way the meets are structured is the events typically scale up in distance. So a lot of distance runners who would run two events would do the mile first and then the 2 mile. And so it's less of a shock on the legs. Like if you were to go from the 2 mile down to the mile, the increase in pace would be much more difficult.
That makes sense, right? Yeah.
But if you were to start with the mile and then go to the 2, it's much less intense on the legs and more intense on the lungs and the aerobic system. So it's definitely, I don't know if it's intentional, but it's definitely nice for it to be structured that way.
So that's kind of physically how that plays out. What about mentally, Luke? Like, what does that feel like mentally going, you know, you've competed hard on a short race and now, you know, you're going to up the distance for the next one. What's that like on a mental side?
So it kind of depends on how you look at it. You can be very intimidated going up in the distance, especially if you had run a race and obviously put your body on the line. But at the same time, running the second race of the day, you've kind of gone through the motions of dialing yourself into the competition phase and mentally locking in. And once you've done that once, it becomes easier. So I find a lot of the pressure or the things that kind of get to my head in the first race are gone by the second race, and I have a much clearer head, though not a clearer body. So I find that on the mental aspect, preparing for the first race is the toughest, and then by the time the second race rolls around, you've gone through the motions, and the race kind of takes care of itself.
So there's kind of a whole nother line of or topic of discussion, you know, that we could really dive into, right? And it's the whole like mental aspect to all of this, even just the competitions themselves, Luke. But if you can kind of nutshell it for us, you know, you competed in high school running, you know, you compete now competitively in college. How do you stay mentally sharp for these races? Like, how do you stay mentally sharp from it season to season? You're competing, you know, at different times in 3 different seasons of running. How do you handle that?
Well, I think my teammates definitely play a huge role in keeping me accountable and mentally focused for entire seasons because, like I said, the cross country season is 6 months long, and it's really hard to get out every single day and run for an hour or 2 hours every single day, knowing your first race is 3 months away.
Right.
And I think my teammates did a really good job of like keeping me mentally there. But it is really tough, and obviously with COVID last year, we didn't compete at all. And something I found that I had like lost the ability to really dial in during the week. If we had a race on Saturday, like mentally go through the steps on Thursday and Friday to kind of prepare. And it took a few weeks to get that back. And so the first few races in the fall were extremely tough. And I've always found that running cross country, running 5 mile, like racing 5 miles instead of racing 1 mile, mentally is a completely different beast. In that you're just alone with your thoughts for so much longer. Like a typical 5 mile cross country race can be 20, 25 minutes. Whereas a track race, a mile will be 4 minutes.
Right.
So it's an extra 20 minutes. And if 20 minutes seems long, if you're racing, it seems like an eternity. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to
what's
going
on. What's going on in your head during that period of time, Luke, where you've got nothing but just 20 some minutes to grind this out? What's going on in your head?
I would say there's definitely different phases of the race. The first mile, you kind of just want to stay under control because a lot of races, like you can't win a race in the first mile, but you can lose one. And so the first mile, even 2 miles, is about just kind of staying calm and collected and smooth. When I was racing the 8Ks in the fall, that was kind of all that was running through my head. I was just stay smooth, stay relaxed, just make it to like the 5K, which is just over the halfway mark, and then start to dial it in. And if you can do that and get to the 5K mark, then you're in a good spot. I've definitely had races where I was hurting way before that and knowing that this was going to be a very big struggle and mental battle with myself. And so once you get past 5K, then you kind of start to dial it in. You start to focus on the people ahead of you, start to say to yourself, like, let me get 2 jerseys in the next 2 minutes. Let me pass one guy. And then the last mile, it's just, you kind of shut your brain off and it's whatever you have at that point.
Just go.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's a completely different experience than running track, because track is very like quantitative. You can see your splits every 400 meters.
So like that. So take us through a mile, Luke. Like you've got like some 4 minutes in that indoor track, that mile, indoor or outdoor. What does that look like?
It's really different because you can see every time you come around, you can see your time. You have people around you. You know exactly what pace you've been running. And it's short enough to where the first lap is just basically pure excitement and like jostling for position. Then the next 800 meters, it's only 2 minutes, so it's not a very long time. Where you start to push, you start to settle into your rhythm, and then the last minute, it's just whatever you have. Whereas cross country, you can just like the first mile alone. It's really hard to kind of keep under control. But yeah, track is incredible. Like it's very different. I think mentally it's a little easier, but physically it's incredibly intense. Like you never reach that pace in a cross country race, and because of that, you need to take kind of a different approach in terms of like lifting and nutrition, and adjusting training accordingly.
So at the college now where you're at, Luke, is there trainers that work with you guys and kind of help plan this out? Or, is that on you as an individual on the team? How does that work?
There are trainers, yeah. And I've been fortunate enough to have a coach who's incredibly dedicated and totally awesome. And she was very open to kind of changing the training plan a little bit this year, after a year of not competing, to accommodate like the growing pains of getting back into racing. And the different approach like totally worked this year. We had a lot of success as a team, which is really cool.
That's tremendous. That's great to hear. Something we've heard you mention, a few different times, Luke, when you've talked about, whether it be cross country or track, you've mentioned the different stretching and like long stretches and stuff. Talk to us about how you approach your mobility and recovery.
Yeah, so I think the hips are, as a runner, the hips are definitely the most important. And so I think those are the primary muscle groups that I kind of target when I'm stretching. I typically I try not to stretch every day. I find when I do that, my muscles get either too loose, too overstretched, and I frequently can feel injured. But I found it is incredibly important to stretch and to not neglect that. And yeah, I don't really stretch the upper body that much, but the lower body with the calves, the quads, the hamstrings. But I would say the hips are definitely the most important as a runner, and as a lifter, because it is where you generate
for sure
the primary source of your power.
For sure. Luke, talk to us a little bit about the commitment that it takes, and again, we touched on it a bit in the beginning, but what's the true commitment it takes to be a multi-season athlete and a student?
Yeah, it's a pretty big commitment. I would say like you could, I guess, quantitatively put it in hours per week, but I think it's more than that, and it's harder to measure because in season, especially when you're not exercising, stretching, or whatnot, you're still thinking about the race, like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis in training, like a conscious decision of like what you're eating and like how much you're sleeping. And so I think it's like a year-round 24/7 commitment to be a 3-season athlete. And we do get a few breaks. Like December was relatively stress-free, as in I'm not competing for a long time. I'm not in school. I'm with my family. Like it just gave me a lot of time to kind of relax and run easy, swim easy, cycle easy. And yeah.
Luke, in general now, and it doesn't have to be just your teammates, but what's your favorite part about the running community?
I love the running community as a whole. I think just like this shared suffering, like this common like embodiment of just grit and grinding and like just putting yourself in uncomfortable positions is what I love, because a lot of my friends who aren't runners don't really understand why I love running so much. Because they're like, why do you run? It's so hard. But I guess if you have to ask that question, like you don't really truly understand like just the power of sports and having a team and pushing your body. And there's just something about it that's so rewarding. And it's really hard to put into words, but I love the community as a whole, and it's why I got into running. And it's why I stayed with running, and it's why I'm here.
Yeah. So. That's tremendous. Luke, what advice would you give to anyone listening that's interested in pursuing running?
I would say it stinks getting into shape. It's awesome being in shape. But you
Isn't that the truth?
So like some days are obviously going to be much harder than others, especially in the beginning. I find even when I come back after a long season, it's pretty frustrating, feeling out of shape, feeling like this is harder than it should be.
Right.
But you just kind of have to keep showing up, and eventually it does get better. And I think it's hard at face value to kind of get into running because of that barrier to entry, because you kind of need to stick with it, and it does take a long time to see results. Like, for example, the cross country season or a track season, we run 6 months for 5 races. And so that's a lot of time spent for just a few minutes and a few like moments of the season, but I guess that's kind of what it's all about, just a few moments, because nothing feels better than like those days, and it makes it all worth it. But it is kind of hard to lose hope in the short term, and you just kind of have to show up every day, whether you feel great or whether you feel terrible. So.
Yeah. Luke, outside of running, what's your favorite way to stay active?
I really like to go hiking. I just kind of like being outdoors, playing backyard sports with my friends. Obviously, being in Vermont, there's a lot of opportunities to do that. And there are a lot of amazing trails nearby. So I just love kind of being outside, relaxing outside, even lying down. Like I just love the Vermont community as a whole, and the student body. Like most of the students who came here, not only came here for the school, but also for what is around the school. And so you do find a lot of active people, different people who just like to be outside.
Right.
And I love those kind of people.
Oh, absolutely. That's tremendous. Luke, I want to shift gears a little bit for us here, and I want to talk about Catch a Lift. Luke, when did you first learn about the Catch a Lift Fund?
So I learned about the Catch a Lift Fund probably 5 or 6 years ago. I learned about it through my mom, who has played a major role, and she had taken me to a few of the events, a few of the fitness events or the formal events, and that's kind of what got me into it. Just kind of seeing like the power of fitness, the power of group fitness, and that's kind of what got me into running. And so I really connected with it on a fundamental level, and really like knew. I really thought I could like relate to a lot of these people who use fitness as a tool, as an escape from a daily life. Because though I totally enjoy fitness, life can get a little hectic sometimes. And,
for sure.
It's a really good thing to just be able to forget about all of that and go for a run or exercise or go for a run with friends and that kind of stuff.
What do you think was the impact on you personally, being able to come to these Warrior Weekends, being able to meet some of the veterans, whether it was, at, a studio or a gym, or if it was at a formal event, what did witnessing those veterans, what was that impact like on you?
It was really powerful, and it made me really, really appreciative of this organization, for one, but also just for the power of fitness. I thought I could connect with a lot of these people through that, and I know everyone has gone through everyone's coming from very, very different backgrounds and has dealt with very different things. And I thought that these events were a point where people could kind of come together, and it didn't matter like where you came from or what you had been through. Just everyone was kind of melding together in this awesome way, and that totally sold me on this organization. Yeah, it was really special to see, especially the target demographic group, which is frequently neglected in the U.S.
Right.
And it does not receive, I think, the attention that it deserves. And to see that come to fruition and realize the change and impact that it was having was really, really special.
For sure. Luke, you've been an absolutely tremendous ambassador for the Catch a Lift Fund for, a number of years now. Would you talk to us about that, having that opportunity to be an ambassador for CAL and share our mission with other people?
Yeah, it's really special. I've been very, very grateful to have been a part of it. I just think a lot of it goes underappreciated, and to kind of bring that to as many people as I can has been very, very rewarding. I've definitely reached out and kind of shed some light on the issue, and now a lot of people are more aware of it or now involved in the organization. And it was just something that I kind of had intrinsically through running. Like I understood the power of fitness as a rehabilitation tool.
Right.
And And so I think like I tried to put my own spin on it, and help in my own way, because I felt that that was more authentic and true to myself, because and also it was something that people could kind of look at and see that, hey, like this is what I enjoy doing, and what I can do something that I enjoy while simultaneously helping many people, and it's really cool to see.
Oh, it's absolutely incredible. And we are so grateful for you, Luke, and, the dedication that you've showed to the Catch a Lift Fund, and that you continue to back us and, be a great ambassador for our organization. What would you say to any other young people, young adults who are listening that are interested in being an ambassador for Catch a Lift?
I would say just find something that you're passionate about, and you can always relate that to helping this organization. For me, it was running. I found running has kind of dictated a lot of my life, and using that as a tool to drive change and assist in what this organization has been pushing has been really beneficial.
Luke, I have one last question for you today. What does it mean to you to be Cal Strong?
I guess it can mean different things for different people. For me, it's kind of this intrinsic quality that I talked about a little before, of grit and satisfaction, kind of knowing like the struggles and adversity you've kind of faced in the past, and despite that, like still getting out the door and achieving whatever you would put your mind to. I guess everybody does deal with different challenges and different experience, but the ability to commonly push through these things is a shared idea that Catch a Lift kind of embodies, and is what has been so beneficial to me and appealing.
Luke, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your light with us today. And thank you so much for the incredible work you do to spread the Catch a Lift message. We are so very grateful to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. That's it for this week's episode of Coach's Corner. We will return next Wednesday at 1 Eastern Time with another episode. Thank you again, Luke, for sharing your story and your light with us all. Thank you to ID Technologies for your support of this podcast. Thank you to Lynn Coughlin, Henry Pomper, and Kaylee Nassiri for the work that you do to make this podcast possible week after week. And we thank the entire Catch a Lift team. Don't forget to join us every Wednesday live at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for a chance to win Cal swag and a chat with your brothers and sisters. Until next week, keep it real and stay Cal strong.